Hello everyone, today we're going to start a new series called Alpha Centauri. We're going to talk about Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, a game that was released in 1999 in February on the 12th. Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri is one of those games that is less what it appears on the surface and more behind the scenes, basically. Why am I talking about a game that's 22 years old? To say this game had an impact on me was a little much of an understatement, to be honest. This game looks like a reskinned version of Civilization 2. In fact, it's probably largely in fact true to that point. But there's a lot more under the surface, and this series will explore the various plots, the various leaders, and to a lesser extent, the questions that it asks the player. The setting. Alpha Centauri starts at the end of Civilization 2 with the space race victory. In the 22nd century, the United Nations creates a vessel called Unity. Unity is a colony ship basically sent to the Alpha Centauri planet, or Chiron. However, unknown to the humans is that planet it's alive, and the humans coming to that planet start to wake it up. Some extraterrestrials, known as the progenitors, had been conducting experiments in vast distributed nervous systems culminating in a planetary biosphere-sized persistent nervous system, or a manifold, as it's called on the game. Chiron, or as it becomes known to the various fractions, Planet, has a series of monoliths and artifacts which make up nodes and various items that you can interact with during your time playing the game. This game is, on the surface, it looks quite ugly. There are some very strange palette choices, but again, under the surface, it's not what it appears to be. To say this game is a masterpiece is a bit of an understatement. This game has been compared to Kubrick's works, Herbert's works, Clarke's works, and Asimov's works. It's that in depth, and it has that much of lore behind it. The game, of course, was developed by both Sid Meier and Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds is probably the primary person who wrote the lore on the game, and in fact, later on there were some books and some comics and a GURPS version of the setting itself. We'll get to those a bit later on. Let's just go overview of the very brief plot. The story unfolds shortly before making planetfall. One of the individuals, the leader of the expedition, is assassinated by one of the members of the crew. At the moment, when you're starting to play, you don't know who this person is, and in fact, this mystery went on for quite a while until you found out some background lore. Who was it? Well, it was Santiago. Santiago caused the fractions to emerge. She caused the problems that happened. And we're going to look at the mutiny on the Unity, and we're going to look at what happens to the various people in another video. This video is just to largely introduce you to the setting, to largely introduce you to the game. You can get it on GOG. It's been free a few times via that method, so do keep an eye on it if you're interested from this video. The game itself includes quotes from Aristotle, Clarke, Einstein, Plato, Machiavelli, and various others to display its various technologies and developments. The various leaders themselves are voiced by various individuals, and we'll come to those when we do a deep dive into the various individuals on Planet. The game itself was developed from 1996 by Firaxis, and now it's in some sort of weird limbo hell because it was published by EA, so EA owns some of the rights, as does Firaxis, neither of which is willing to work with the other again. Firaxis basically publishes its own stuff now, so it's largely done away with needing EA as a distribution partner. The game itself had critical acclaim. The reviews gave it about 90%, 89%, and it had an expansion pack called Alien Crossfire, which introduced new fractions as well as 2 alien ones that were very, very overpowered compared to the human fractions. We'll come to that as we'll look at the various faction leaders. Ryan Reynolds is quoted as saying, "There's a lot of firsts for our team in making Alpha Centauri. We'd never done a public beta test before, and this was the first time we released a demo before the game was out. Since we'd not done that before, we didn't know what to expect from people when we released it, but it turned out to be a right fit with Firaxis' interactive design method." The design team started with a very simple game. They strengthened the fun aspects and removed the unenjoyable ones. A process Sid Meier once called surrounding the fun. After revisions, they played it again and repeated the cycles until they got a game that they were happy with. In single player mode, the team tried various strategies to find surefire paths to victory. Alpha Centauri was one of the very first games with public beta tests. Reynolds himself is quoted on saying that it was a marketing tool, the demo was, and they were able to incorporate many suggestions into the retail version from that demo. They fixed glitches, they improved the AI, and Michael Ellie wrote 35 weekly episodes of the Journey to Centauri detailing the splintering of the Unity, which we're going to look at. A month after it was released, Firaxis started work on Alien Crossfire, and they introduced some new victory conditions, such as the primogenitor victory, and several additional concepts and strategies. They included new people such as Tane, Chris Pine as programmer, Jeremy Andertholt and Greg Fortish as artist, and Doug Kaufman as co-designer for balance. Some people wanted to improve the various build aspects, feeling that God game genre had always slanted towards the conquer part of this spectrum. He wanted to provide builders with the tools to create an empire, and the internet provided a lot of feedback during the creation of the game, and they created the Flechette defense system, algorithmic enhancement, and neck tack terminus from the internet. They had several goals. The factions must be fun, and the coolness of the progenitor aliens would determine the failure or success of Alien Crossfire. They strove to make them feel significantly different to play, but compatible with existing platforms. They developed various new creatures and aliens, as well as giving new factions such as the pirates. Game will get to those. It's been ported to Mac and Linux. Alright. There have been no direct sequels to Alpha Centauri, and will come to Beyond Earth a little later in the series. Calling it a spiritual sequel, as Firaxis did at one point and then started to move away from that, is rather insulting to Alpha Centauri. Beyond Earth has its issues, and the game will come to them, but calling it a spiritual sequel seems a disservice to the original. Alpha Centauri can teach you a lot of things if you're willing to listen. It poses questions on humanity, on politics, on the themes of being human, and if humanity is worth sticking to as a concept, or if you want to become something greater with something bigger than yourself. These are questions which a young version of me really hadn't thought about before. I hadn't thought about what it would be like to transcend humanity. I hadn't thought what it would be like to be forced to commit to an ideology that maybe I would find difficult or uninteresting. And as I played through the various factions, it posed me a lot of questions that I simply did not have the answers to then, and some of them I still don't. Alpha Centauri is thought-provoking, and it's still thought-provoking. It took a lot of risks which games now simply would not take, simply because it poses questions for the player to answer, and doesn't provide you with browbeating or insulting ways of to put a message. Those messages, those questions, those things, those ideas are for you to find out, you to answer in your life and your playthroughs. It's a wonderful and great experience, and although it does look extremely dated now, it is worth playing simply because of the questions and the plot and the game that it is. I will add something though. This isn't like your Civ 2s, this isn't like your Civ 3s. This game has a plot, and as you play through it, you can largely ignore it if you wish to, but it would be a waste, it would be a disservice to the game if you did so. Finding out that planet is alive is a massive revelation, that the planet is actually fighting against the people who are trying to live on it and survive on it. It is an interesting concept which, again, Beyond Earth tries to do it at some point and fails completely. All respect due to the developers of Beyond Earth. You couldn't capture what made the original great. You tried and you failed. And you failed rather badly. And you produced a game that was poor. Very poor. And it was really sad that something that created a lot of hype in me from its original press conferences turned out to be such a poor thing, a disappointing thing. We are never going to see the likes of Alpha Centauri again, or Alien Crossfire. We may never see a remaster simply because of the hell that EA and Firaxis have got themselves into, and neither side wanting to work with the other again. Saying that, EA did work with the old team of Westwood to bring back CNC 1 and Red Alert 1, as well as the various expansion packs for it. I don't see it returning, and that's a real shame. It's a game that, as I said, asked very important questions on life, the universe and everything. It even had a quote by Douglas Adams. The game is great and it's an amazing masterpiece, and it should be something that stands in the Gaming Hall of Fame forever. There is something that it just doesn't come close. No game has come close to it in these asking questions, in these thoughts. No matter what you think about modern AAA titles and the questions and the answers they pose for you and the ideologies they follow, nothing will make you think as much as Alpha Centauri while playing, and stop. And after you play it, years and years later, 22 years later, I still have questions from playing that game. So that's the beginning of the Alpha Centauri series. It is a bit of a weird look at something from my past, and we will look at it if this video gets some traction. I hope it does, because I want to bring the stories of planets, the stories of the Unity with you all, because not many channels are looking at Alpha Centauri as not only a game but something that poses questions of life, of philosophy, of ethics, of morality. And it doesn't browbeat you with these questions. It doesn't force you to take a side. It's up to you. And that's a special, special thing. Thank you everyone for taking the time to watch this video. Take care of yourselves, and bye bye.